Damn, Patterson, back at it again with the white van. Okay, we're gonna pretend that meme didn't exist all those years ago, because I think maybe some of the folks that are watching this video, if you're too old, you're like, what the hell was that? And if you're too young, you're like, what the hell was that? Only a very specific demographic would get that. Anyways, we are continuing with our Vancouver Canucks trade talk, because I was out on vacation on the weekend. If you didn't see the last video I made, I was out on vacation for a little New Year's Eve festivities. In fact, my New Year's Eve today will be spent in the hospital, so expect maybe a post-game vlog in the ER. Who knows what's going to happen with that, but because there were a bunch of things that happened in the Vancouver Canucks whilst I was out and about, I wanted to go out there and make a second video going over some trade stuff. Because on Sekeres and Price earlier yesterday, you had Jeff Patterson and Matt Sekeres doing the thing with Darren Dreger, Cam Robinson, plus a few others, and you had yourselves Canucks News Summaries who went out there and gave us the summary as to what the latest is in JT Miller, and whether or not there is some sort of a trade that could go down. So, big shout out over to Canucks News Summaries once more, the recap of Darren Dreger's interview with Sekeres and Price today, with Jeff Patterson playing the role of Price because Price is doing play-by-play at the Spengler Cup. Let's go out there and read the Trading Miller section. So, here is the entire post, Trading Miller. The folks and Darren Dreger on the podcast, they are not in the position to answer the question if either Pettersson or Miller have to be traded. Sources from around the league have told Dreger that there's been a lot more chatter around Miller. He doesn't think anyone should be surprised. Miller's name always finds the rumor mill. There are allegations about Miller and Pettersson, but they have been removed. You don't have to like your coworker. Maybe this was much to do about very little, though. Now, I do think that is interesting to note how the allegations from a few weeks ago that was a really big story for some reason, it did get to a point where a lot of us here on YouTube in the comments section as well as on national freaking media were talking about it. The fact that Elliot Friedman had an entire segment on his Saturday headlines a few weeks ago talking about Miller and Pettersson not liking each other, and then Bruce Boudreau was brought onto Overdrive on TSN to talk about it too. There was so much going on about this Elias Pettersson, JT Miller stuff, but I do like that Dreger talks about how much of these conversations have been toned down. Maybe it was much to do about very little, which is good, right? Maybe this really isn't that big of a deal. However, they do discuss afterwards that the rumored rift probably fielded the speculation around the NHL and got teams calling the Canucks about Miller. They're also sure that Patrik Allvin has gotten called about Elias Pettersson as well, which we did talk about in the video earlier today, whether or not Allvin could trade Pettersson. He said that it's not impossible, or no, that's not the phrasing he used. He didn't say it's not impossible. He said, anything's possible! Okay, no, sorry. We're gonna calm down with the old Kevin Garnett there. Anyways, Darren Dreger wanted to remind people that GMs have conversations about basically everybody too. So that, I think, is a good reminder as well that, yeah, just because your name is $11 million caliber does not mean that you are exempt from being brought up in some sort of a conversation, like some GM across the league's like, hey, Patty, what do you think about Petey? Do you think that guy's available? And then Patty says maybe no, they hang up, and then it's reported, oh yeah, they asked about Pettersson. It's kind of how it works, doesn't it? I mean, we make videos about this stuff because it's funny, but still, that's also a thing you have to consider. JT Miller has not been asked to consider waiving his no-move clause, but this doesn't prevent teams from calling and talking. Teams are letting Allvin know that if he ever wants to trade Miller, this is what they'd be willing to do. Allvin has had those conversations in the past, and trade chatter has increased as of late. However, this does not mean that Miller is imminently getting moved. So, when you think about this and you compare it to the Elias Pettersson talk that was also discussed, and by the way, there is a little bit more of a conversation about Miller, we can get into that in a little bit here, but when you talk about the Elias Pettersson stuff that Allvin said, how anything's possible, how Pettersson needs to step up, he needs to face the music, I wonder just how much Allvin's perspective on Miller differentiates as well, because you didn't see Ian McIntyre talk about a trade with JT Miller in that same Patrik Allvin interview. Maybe there was a little bit too much talk about trading one of your top-tier superstars. to include a conversation about Miller, right? Like, they already got this entire juicy bit from Alvin about Pettersson, but Miller, nah, you can't really talk about trading him. But regardless, knowing that other teams have already put their foot in the door, they've already said to Patty Alvin, hey, if you're going to trade Miller, this is what we'd be willing to do. It does get me intrigued as to what options there are and how much bargaining power Patrick Alvin really has in these situations. Because think about it, if teams are already sending you their pitches, already giving you ideas as to what JT could fetch on the trade market, I mean, does that not indicate the intense evaluations that other teams have on this situation? Yeah, everybody's talking about JT Miller, everybody's talking about his rift with Elias Pettersson, everybody's talking about trading him, and here's our package, Alvin. What do you think? Patrick Alvin might be able to use this as a pretty big bargaining chip if a Miller trade were to ever manifest itself in reality. If they did ever have to ask him to waive, which they would need to because Miller has no move protection, he would be in charge of wherever it is that he goes. But learning so far that Alvin has not asked Miller to waive in any capacity. There hasn't been any sort of request there. That does give us some info as to where the Canucks are with this entire thing. Seems more so that they're just kind of fielding offers right now, trying to wait and see. There was that entire wait and see idea that was talked a lot about in October, November-ish, where it was like, okay, we gotta wait until Thatcher Demko comes back, and then at that point we can evaluate where the Canucks are and what they need to do, whether or not they can make the playoffs or be a serious contender this year. But it's hard to evaluate now because Demko's back, but all of a sudden Petey is out, and Hughes was out, and Miller left for a month, and the team still is blowing leads and everything in their absence. So what really are the Vancouver Canucks? Are they good? Are they bad? I'm not sure. Let's go back over onto the S&P summary, though, and read what the folks, Darren Dreger, Patterson, Sakaris, talk about in regards to the Rangers. Because this is the other update also included in the same Twitter post by Vancouver Canucks News Summaries. Darren Dreger says he doesn't recall an article more eviscerating of a talent pool more than Larry Brooks' article on Sunday in the New York Post. Brooks' sources within the Rangers are impeccable, and he took the players to the task. Dan Boyle tried to get Larry Brooks thrown out of the dressing room before. Brooks says the players are not playing for Peter Laviolette, and if that's true, he has a problem. His days on the bench are numbered. He also doesn't necessarily think that a coaching change has to come before a trade. And if you didn't see it, yeah, Larry Brooks absolutely toasted the buttocks of one old Peter Laviolette in New York. That situation has been getting very bad as the season has gone on. They started the year, like 12-4-1 or whatever it was, and then they went absolutely down the drain, flushed away Ratatouille style afterwards. So kind of unfortunate if you're a fan of the New York Rangers, a team that makes the third round seemingly every year, it feels like. But Dreger does continue saying that he can appreciate why you would like the Canucks and the Rangers in a trade. If the Rangers want Miller, then the Canucks are going to want one of their best players in return. A major trade between the Canucks and the Rangers is possible and plausible, and based on what he's reading from Brooks, they could also see a coaching change. And so with that, it's yet another discussion linking JT to the Rangers, where top insider Darren Dreger says it is very well possible. It's possible, it's plausible, it's two peas in a pod. And ultimately, I feel like a lot of Rangers fans, too, like to discuss about Miller. It is interesting because last time we spoke about it, we did make a video going over the Miller-Lafreniere stuff, which was written from the perspective of a Rangers fan saying, hey, I would see this as a trade that would make sense, and Miller and his drive, his motivation, what he does in the locker room, and how he takes control and he demands things out of people, like that's the kind of energy the Rangers need in the room, and that was an idea met with varying levels of agreeance and disagreeance in the comment section, so you could let me know your thoughts in the comments about this thing here as well. But with Darren Dreger going over an entire thing about Miller and a trade idea, I did want to make this in a separate video from the Pettersson stuff because, as we had said, man, two peas in a pod. PD and JT, not peas because JT doesn't start with a P, but still you get what I mean here. Lots of talk going on about trading top-tier Vancouver guys, especially since some of the other top guys are not in the lineup heading into today's game against the Calgary Flames. I'll watch the game normally for the first two periods, but in the third period, I'm going to be at the hospital. So I might not even see what happens towards the end there. Probably going to be in a waiting room for the next hours after that, so maybe we'll see a post-game vlog. from the waiting room, who really knows? But yeah, my New Year's Eve is going to be in the hospital, so I'm looking forward to talking about that. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, though, about this JT Miller trade update via Darren Dreger on Sakaris and Price featuring Jeff Patterson. I'll leave a link in the description to all the things that you need to see. I hope you enjoyed this. 99, and bye.